It is that hot out. Tonight, folks, as I said, we're returning to the JFK Assassination. Now, most people are aware of the Zapruder film. That's that very famous film that Oliver Stone utilized in his classic film, JFK, Back into the Left, Back into the Left. But there's another film just as equally as important. And that was taken by a fellow by the name of Orville Nix that day. And what it does is it shows the assassination as it takes place right in front of what we've become known as the Grassy Knoll. Now, it shows it from the south side looking north, the opposite side that the Zapruder film was shot at. The Zapruder film was shot from the north side looking south. This is virtually the mirror of it. Now, what is explosive about this story is the authorities took away that camera and the film. And when the camera was returned to Orville, just 3 days later, it was in pieces, and Mr. Nix claims that the film looked altered, and it's gone missing. Tonight we're going to be talking about a new book with none other than Gayle Nix Jackson, who, Nix, right in the middle of the name, his granddaughter. The book is called Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film. And I have to tell you, folks, Gayle Nix Jackson's from Texas, and anybody from Texas is good with me. She's a 19-year-old bombshell, and I encourage you all to go and see her pictures on her website, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. Gayle, thank you for joining us tonight. How are you doing? Yes.
I am blushing, and you can't see me blushing because, first off, I'm not 19, but thank you for saying so.
You're not 19?
No.
Because half of Canada's on their way down there to date you. Don't tell your husband. They're bringing beer, by the way, because it's so hot out today.
My daughter is 18, so if that helps any. She's the bombshell in the family. I'm just the bomb, how shall we say this? Bomb maker, maybe? Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
You're funny. Let's talk about your granddad.
Okay.
What the heck was he doing in Dealey Plaza that day? And
you know, he was friends with Forrest Sorrells, the head of the Secret Service in Dallas. And Forrest knew that he loved to take his camera. My grandfather, he wasn't a photographic expert, but he loved to take pictures of jets and clouds and his grandkids. And Forrest knew he had a new camera, and he said, look, you need to stand down here at Maine and Houston. You ought to get it just perfectly. So my grandfather got all gussied up like everyone did. See, did you hear that word gussy? That was a Texas word.
Yeah, wait till I say about, I'll get you back.
He got all dressed up and decided that he was going to take me, my sister, and my brother, and my mother and my grandmother down to see the president. Well, my mother decided 3 kids was too much for her to handle, so she brought me, and because I was the oldest. That's one of those good things about being the oldest. And my grandmother, and we were to meet him at Maine and Houston, but the crowds were so thick, there was no way to get down there. So anyway, he started taking his film. He got down there early. He saw the epileptic seizure. He saw all the people. I mean, he's talked about it for years. There were all the people down there, but the epileptic seizure really concerned him because his younger brother had epilepsy. So it was kind of like karmic or something. But anyway, when he began to take the film, it was just as the motorcade was turning from Maine onto Houston. And this is a funny little fact. He really did not like Ralph Yarbrough, the senator. And as he was taking the film, he barely got a glimpse of President Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy, and he really wanted to get more. But Ralph Yarbrough kind of like turned towards him and waved, and I think it upset him, so he's like, oh, no. Excuse me. I've got to see the president. I don't want Ralph Yarbrough. So about that time, he went running down Main Street. Now, you understand he was on the far side of Main Street. You know, not there in the middle, but on the far side of Main Street. And as he began to run, all the shots started, and people were dropping all around him and covering up their kids and screaming and yelling. And honestly, Brent, he did not even know he was taking the assassination. He did not even know. The Keystone camera he had a grip on it. So because he was so anxious, and because, I mean, I can't even imagine what it would be like then, he was gripping it, and that's how he took the assassination footage. If you'll look at it, that's why it's always kind of skewed. You know, the original, if we could ever find it, the first generation copies, when you see the Nix film, it's kind of like at an angle. That's because he was not so much running. He was 6'6", so his kind of running or walking quickly would be like running for you and I, but that's why it looks the way that it does. And he didn't even, like I said, he didn't even realize he had the assassination footage. When he looked down at his camera at the counter, he realized that he still had 23 feet left of film. And being how he was frugal, honestly, it's because my grandmother would yell at him about spending money on film.
Some things don't change over generations, folks, by the way.
Yeah. He said, well, okay, I guess I didn't get anything. So the next morning at 7:30 in the morning, he went back down there to show my grandmother what he had seen, where he felt the shots came from, where he was standing, and took more footage that morning. And so he looks down at his camera counter again, and he still has footage. So later on in the week, my dad had called and said, hey, Dad, can you go to the football game? Because all the football games on that weekend that the president died had been canceled. So my dad called him and said, can you go down to the football game and take a picture of my wife's little brother's girlfriend? She's performing at halftime. So my grandfather said, well, okay, I'll get rid of my film that way. And that's what he did. He went down and took pictures of the football game, you know, Texas and football, took pictures and looked down and all of his film was gone. So he raced it to Dynacolor and dropped it off and went back home to watch midget wrestling. My grandfather liked midget wrestling.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Some of my fondest memories are watching wrestling with my grandfather as well.
Did they have midget wrestling in Canada?
Oh, God, yeah. I think we invented it, to be honest with you. No, I'm kidding. But it was very popular in this extent.
When I spent the night with him, I was like, oh, gee, it's time for me to go to bed. I didn't like midget wrestling. They were scary to me. I mean, you know. So anyway, Dynacolor calls him in the middle of the night and says, Mr. Nix, you've got assassination footage here. And as you know, the FBI says we have to turn it over, but it is your film and we want you to see it. And he was groggy. I mean, they woke him up. And he said, what? And they said, well, we thought maybe we had lost your footage, but we realized you had brought it in tonight. So he hadn't been home maybe 3 or 4 hours that they called him and said, hey, come get it. So he called my dad, and he went over and picked up my dad, and there they went down to Dynacolor in the middle of the night. It must have been 2:30 or 3 in the morning. And they watched it 40 or 50 times on a big white wall over and over and over. And my grandfather said every time he watched it, he saw something different. You know, he saw a lady, or he saw a man on the side, or he just saw things differently, and he was in awe. I mean, he couldn't believe that he had taken it, you know. And from there on, the rest of it is, you had mentioned earlier, Brent, that the FBI had taken his camera. They did.
Yeah,
that wasn't until that wasn't until later. What they did first, my grandfather was a good American, and he worked for the GSA, the General Services Administration. So he immediately, that Monday morning, which by the way was December 1st, a week after the assassination, he took it down to the FBI himself. He called his friend Forrest and said, who do I take it to? And Forrest told him, and he went down there and dropped it off. And they kept it for 3 days. And then his camera, that was later, and they kept it for 5 months. 5 months they kept his camera and sent it back to him in pieces. He was livid.
No kidding. Folks, we're speaking with Gayle Nix Jackson. Yeah, if I gave, a piece of my, and that's expensive in those days, folks. It's not like today, where you go out and buy a digital camera for $1.50 or something. We're
Right.
talking a wackadoodle in those days. And let's not forget that it's only recently that digital's been around, the past decade or so, en masse. Before that, everything was done analog. You would virtually take your photos, take your film on analog tape, and have to get it developed, which was putting this stream of film, everybody's seen film at this point, through a series of various baths, if you will, of chemicals in order to bring the image out. And it was
Right.
just tiny, tiny little stuff. They would blow it up after, or you'd stick it through a projector. Gayle Nix Jackson's our guest tonight, folks. We're looking at her new book, Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film. An easy way to get her book, as all our guests, www.nightfrightshow.com, www.nightfrightshow.com. I just want to explain a couple of things to those that might be listening that aren't aware of the epileptic seizure that was mentioned by Gayle. This took place, Kennedy was shot approximately 12:30 in Dallas, Texas time. Prior to Kennedy arriving in Dealey Plaza, he was 10 minutes late because the crowds were so thick on Main Street as the motorcade tried to wind its way down the street. Something ominous took place, and that was an epileptic seizure. Many people think that was a distraction, if you will, in order for the shooters in Dealey Plaza to get in place, because everybody's focal point was on the epileptic seizure. As a matter of fact, the person who drove the ambulance, Aubrey Reich, to pick up the person who was having the epileptic seizure, said that all week long his company had been receiving telephone calls all around the same time, and he thought it very suspicious, like somebody was timing their response. And for it to happen coincidentally right around the time Kennedy's motorcade was supposed to be in Dealey Plaza, like I just said, it was a few minutes late, just heightened the whole conspiracy scenario. Ralph Yarborough, of course, was a senator of Texas. He was in the motorcade as well. He was not sitting with Kennedy. That was the governor of Texas who was sitting in front of Kennedy, Governor Connolly, not to be confused with Senator Yarborough. Senator Yarborough was he not sitting with LBJ?
LBJ? Yeah, it was the car behind. And
That's
you know, and they were all arguing, Brent. They were all having this little political brouhaha down here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Where were you November 22nd, 1963? At 19, I guess you were just a gleam in your... How does that go?
Come on, Brent. I wish I was 19 but knew what I knew today. Wait a minute. Isn't there a song like that? I think it is. Rod Stewart, isn't it? I think it is. But, okay,
Yes.
When I tell you this is kind of embarrassing, okay? I was a bratty little kid. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
I was. I will admit it. And I was begging my mother. We had stopped at the drugstore downtown because, of course, I had to go to the bathroom. Being a little kid, you know, that's what all little kids have to do all the time. But as the motorcade went by, I could not see the president. Of course, I was pouty and petulant and all those things that little bratty kids do. And my grandfather, when he finally, we were waiting for him there because that was the waiting place. If we couldn't meet him, we would meet him there. When he finally came down there, I was so excited to see him, but he was so sad. And even as a small child, I remember that he was. And my idea of making people feel better was either to have ice cream or music. And so everyone, it's as if it's a wake all over Dallas that day. Everyone was so upset, and everyone in the whole, we would call it a dime store, everyone inside the little restaurant part of the dime store there were quiet. I mean, it was like a huge wake. But no, I said, Mom, can I put some money in the jukebox to make Pawpaw feel better because he's so sad? And she was like, Gayle, no, this is not the time. And my grandmother, who was, like all good grandparents are, said, oh, Elaine, she's too small. Let her do it. So I had put 10 cents into the little, booth jukebox and was playing Bossa Nova by Elvis Presley. Everyone's mourning the president, and I've got Bossa Nova playing, in the rush. It was kind of embarrassing. But I was a little kid. I mean, I didn't know, that wasn't a respectful thing to do. I liked Elvis Presley. And I thought it would make everybody feel better, which I'm sure looking back now, parents in there were thinking, lady, did you not raise your child any better than to know not to be doing this when something this terrible has happened?
Well, as a child, I think that's your perspective, and I think it's kind of a nice sentiment that you wanted people to be happy and make them feel better. I think that's kind of special, to be honest.
Well, thank you, Brent. Making me feel better for being a brat. Thank you.
Oh, you weren't a brat, I'm sure. Now, when did you finally become interested in all the lore, all the rumors, everything flying around about the Kennedy assassination? Was that earlier on because your grandfather was involved?
I was very, very close to my grandfather. Again, I'm going to say it's because I was the oldest grandchild, and he thought I was really such a smart kid. And kids love that. I mean, when they find an adult who just thinks that they're the most wonderful thing, well, then they want to spend lots of time with them. And my grandfather did. He was a wonderful man anyway. I loved him dearly. And yeah, I would read, he couldn't read very well, Brent. He had only gone through 4th grade. And so, my mother spent a lot of time with me, and I was reading at a very young age. And so he would give me his letters from the government or from Walter Cronkite or whatever and let me read them to him. And he just thought that was wonderful. But yeah, one of the things I remember most, Brett, was when we would spend the night over there with the weekends over there with him, my sister, my brother, and myself, we would get in real trouble if we didn't answer the phone on the first ring. I mean, we would. He loved technology, and to him, the phone, the television, jet airplanes, I mean, that was technology to him. And so like I said, if we didn't answer the phone on the first call or the first ring, we were in trouble. Well, after he had taken the film, he started getting some phone calls. They weren't very nice. It was a few years later that I found out what they really were, but we were told not to answer the phone at all, which was very strange to us. All those years we were told, answer the phone. And then it went to, don't touch that phone. Don't touch that phone. And that's because he was getting phone calls, and some from men, some from women. No one ever gave a name, that would just say, if you know what's good for you, you need to shut your mouth. Or you need to quit talking about the Kennedy assassination. Or you were part of it, weren't you? Did you know that, Kennedy was going to die? Or, just shut your mouth or you'll regret it. Just intimidating phone calls. And so he didn't want us to answer, my sister, my brother, myself, to answer the phone, nor my grandmother, who by that time had met Penn Jones. What a wonderful man. He used to bring us candy. I remember that. But Penn was telling, my grandfather by then, you need to, maybe lay low because people are dying, which scared my grandmother half to death. And as I got older, I told you I was a brat, Brent. I was petulant then as a preteen and a teenager, and I would just kind of make fun of him and go, oh, Papa, no one's trying to kill you. Nobody's going to do anything. That would never happen in America. And, I look back now and I really regret those things, even saying that to him, because he was scared and he was getting those phone calls. And he just honestly quit even giving interviews. He went from being sad that he took the pictures to happy that maybe he was going to make as much money as Zapruder did and retire and play golf the rest of his life, to being scared to even leave the house, or even talk about the film at all.
Did he ever speculate to you who was behind the threatening phone calls?
Never at all. Never. No.
Never did. I was going to ask you, too, did he ever reveal to you what he saw that day when he was taping it? Because, you had mentioned that when it came back, he felt there was parts of the film that were missing, and I was just wondering if he ever clarified what those parts were.
He told us, he would tell me and my dad, because I asked my dad about that before, too, many times. He just said that it seemed darker and it was jumpy. I mean, that's what he said. It just looked different. And like I said, he wasn't a master photographer. So to him, he just knew it was different, but he couldn't explain why. And as far as knowing or who he thought did it, no. But what I will tell you, Brent, and I don't know if you want to jump this far ahead because I just am jumping all around the place here.
Sure.
But,
No, that's fine.
Okay, when CBS interviewed him in '67, and my grandmother, Mark Lane did in '66, and then CBS in '67, and my grandmother was really upset that he was being interviewed by Mark Lane, first off, because she was scared for him. You know, she was worried, and she didn't want him talking to anyone. And then 67, he had told her, okay, I won't do any more interviews. But he did CBS in 67 because he really thought he was going to get to meet Walter Cronkite. And he didn't realize that Walter Cronkite wasn't going to come to Dallas, that it was all going to be handled, you know, by the local news stations. But at that interview, that's the one that did it, Brent. That's the one that did it. Eddie Barker, who was our local man here, would ask him, Mr. Nix, where did the shots come from? And he would say, well, over there at that stockade fence. And they would say, cut, cut, cut. And they'd stop and change all over again. The makeup lady would come pat his nose and put, you know, powder on his nose. And then they'd start again. Mr. Nix, where did the shots come from? And he would say, over there at that stockade fence. And they'd say, cut, cut, cut. This must have gone on 4 or 5 times. Finally, Bernie Birnbaum, who was the head of CBS then, and was very kind to my grandfather, honestly, actually asked my dad if he could have a copy of the film. And my dad was like, well, we've got the copy. I mean, you know, but came over and said, Orville, listen, where did the Warren Commission say the shots came from? And my grandfather said, well, that Texas school book over there, the school book building. And they said, well, okay, that's what you need to say.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And on the way home that day, my sister and my brother had gone with me that day, too, with us that day, because he wanted to show us off to Walter Cronkite. They fell asleep in the back seat, and my grandfather was a chain smoker. He smoked Lucky Strikes. I mean, and he had one cigarette going in the ashtray and one in his mouth, and he was slamming his hands into the steering wheel. And he said, why do they want to make me feel stupid? Why won't they just believe what I have to say? I'm not a stupid man. I know what I saw. And I said, well, Papa, what is the matter? I mean, why are you upset? And he goes, Gayle, you're old enough. I want you to listen to me. The shots came from that stockade fence, and then you believe that until you die. I'm telling you, that's where they came from. And I said, okay, Papa. And he goes, and you never forget that. And I said, I'll never forget it. And I haven't, Brent. I haven't. I mean, you know, I'm a little kid watching my grandfather be upset and watching a man lose his esteem and lose his belief in his government and his belief in everything he thought was right. And it was an epiphany for me, even at such a young age. So, yeah, when '88 rolled around, and he had always told me, my dad did too, in 25 years we get the copyright back. When '88 rolled around, I was on the phone to UPI saying, okay, my name is Gayle Nix Jackson. My grandfather, Orville Nix, made an agreement with Burt Reinhardt and Reese Schoenfeld, and it's been 25 years, and I want my film back. And so since '88, I have been full-blown chasing after the film. To no avail, Brent, because I haven't found it yet. Have I talked to lots of wonderful people, including you? Yes. But I still don't know where the film is.
You know, it's missing evidence to the biggest crime of the 20th century.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes.
What a question. And, you know, it wasn't just an attack on the president. It was an attack on the Constitution of the United States. This is what people need to realize, and this is why it's still important today. I just got to bring people up to speed. We've dropped a bunch of names. I just want to explain who they are. That's okay. Penn Jones, he was an early 60s legend researcher. Mark Lane is absolutely one of the greatest guys I know. I'm proud.
Wait a minute. Remind me to tell you a really funny story about Mark Lane.
I will do for sure. Mark Lane was one of the first he wrote the foreword to my new book. Oh, here's a little segue that wasn't planned. I have a new book out, folks, called JFK Assassination, and my publisher will be very pleased that I'm announcing this because she's always on me, use your show more. So, okay, here we go. So, Deb from Lancer, here you go, sweetie. JFK Assassination, from the Oval Office to Dealey Plaza, and what's special about the book is it features the last interview with Ted Sorensen. Ted Sorensen was JFK's closest aide and also great speechwriter as well. He's the fellow.
Congratulations, Brent. I'm going to read your book. Everyone should buy it. And then after you read his, buy mine, and they'll make a nice little bookends.
Buy them together, folks.
Right.
There you go. Buy them off Amazon together, and you will not be disappointed with either book. And Ted is the guy, folks, actually, that JFK tasked to write the letter to Khrushchev during the Cuban Missile Crisis to get him to back down. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking right now. All this would be mute. We were that close. How close were we? Well, we were so close that Ted told me that Jackie Kennedy, President Kennedy's wife, called him up and wanted to bring the two kids home because she wasn't at the White House during that period, because she wanted them all to die together. That's how close we were. Imagine that. Imagine this scenario for a second, folks, with the Ukraine. Somebody takes a shot at Putin from the Ukraine and kills him. The Russian troops march into the Ukraine. The West, of course, has to go and support the Ukraine. It would escalate to a nuclear holocaust. I would give it 48 hours. And that's how close we were. So you just imagine in today's scenario, Mrs. Obama calling the president to bring the two girls home because they all want to die together. That's how close. Yeah. So
I didn't know that you met Ted Sorensen, really?
I did. I spent an afternoon with him in his Manhattan apartment.
What a writer that man is. I'm in awe of his writing. Really.
Oh, amazing. Just I cannot emphasize how integral he was to JFK. The two guys were in tandem in their thought process, and their thought processes for peace around the world, for their thought process on progressive civil rights. Just an amazing, amazing man. Idealism like I've never seen before. I was just in awe. And now I know why JFK was JFK. And I'm not trying to diminish what JFK accomplished, but he would not have been JFK without Sorensen. And, you know, there was a dream team together during that administration, and I don't think it's been duplicated ever since.
I don't think so either.
And I think it shows, actually, in the situation we are from then to now. And but you need a strong leader, and that was JFK. And we wouldn't have gone to the moon without JFK making that challenge. And that moon launch, folks, was the single second ever that the whole of humanity stopped killing each other for a single second to look at mankind walk on the moon. And JFK brought that together.
Yes.
Yep. Mark Lane, folks, was JFK's campaign manager. He worked with Dr. King. He worked with Bobby. He also did a terrific, one of the first documentaries, if not the first documentary, examining the Warren Commission's finding, and that was called Rush to Judgment. Inside that documentary, he actually interviews Gayle Nix Jackson's grandfather, Orville Nix, about what he saw that day and the film. So I would urge you all just to Google that. I mean, it's readily available on YouTube, and it's fascinating window into that era, and people were just starting to question whether the government would dare lie to its people. And of course, we all know the truth now. That's Mark Lane, and he also wrote the foreword to my book, as I mentioned before. Walter Cronkite, folks, trying to think of somebody that would be equal to him. Anderson Cooper for the younger folk? No, Anderson Cooper hasn't got the chutzpah, but you know, in
maybe
terms,
Tom Brokaw.
Maybe. Everybody turned to Walter for honesty in the news and integrity, and that's why he's so popular. Again, Oliver Stone uses Walter Cronkite when he announces the death of the president, and Walter almost cries. He's got a little mustache. Kind of looks like Walt Disney, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Gayle, after all these years, what's your speculation on what took place November 22nd, 1963? Was Oswald alone?
No. And, Brent, I try to stay really open-minded, and I'm just going to put this out there. There are people who are Warren Commission apologists, who are very bright people, men and women. And I hope, I try to make looking for the Nix film that bridge between the two groups, because I really think, first off, if people totally believed in the Warren Commission, there would not be any arguments ever, because why would there be a need to argue? That's first. But secondly, finding the Nix film would do one of two things. It would either prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was someone on the knoll and there was someone else shooting the president, and it's evidentiary because it's photographic evidence, or it may not. It may prove there was no one there at all. I don't think that it would ever show that. In fact, this last year when I was writing this book, I talked to a man. Oh my goodness, Brent. I still to this day, when I start talking about it, I get chills in my arms. His name was Moses Weitzman. He ran FX Studios in New York.
Yes.
And he said that UPI had brought the film to him after Executive Action, which was made in 1972. Another Mark Lane. Oh, I've got to remind you. I've got to tell you about the Mark Lane story.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. That was my fault. Mark Lane, Executive Action. It was the first JFK movie. Right. And so UPI used the Nix film in it, and FX studied it. Robert Groden was working there then. But later on, UPI brought it down again. Now, this is after Jones Harris had seen what many have come to call the classic gunman image, which Jones Harris believes that he saw, and he saw the original film, a man standing against a station wagon aiming at the president. Now, that has been debunked by many, including iTech, who was run by Frank Lindsay of CIA, Frank Lindsay, and Kim Philby, the Kim Philby incident. But anyway, I digress. Mo Weitzman was shown the film again, and he testified to this all before the ARRB. In it, he saw the Nix film. He looked at that part where Jones Harris had seen, and he said, okay, I don't see anything there. But he went further. And this is something the Warren Commission didn't do, iTech didn't do, the House Select Committee didn't do, the Jet Propulsion Lab didn't do. He went and looked behind the picket fence area. And he had a first-generation copy. I mean, he had, a negative, an internegative from the original. And there, he saw a man. When he told me this, he saw a figure, I shouldn't say man, a figure wearing a red bandana with two pink blobs holding what looked to him like a metallic rod. And that's how he explained it to me. And he said, I always wondered, I never cared about the JFK assassination. I'm more interested in the photogrammetrics, however you say it, more interested in how film went, more in that. But that film stuck in my mind because I thought, why has no one ever seen this? And he said, I showed it to UPI, to Maurice Schoenfeld, who at that time was in charge of taking care of the Nix film for UPI. And he said, when I showed it to him, he started jumping up and down, yelling, Pulitzer Prize, Pulitzer Prize. And he said, the next day he came with a huge check and said for me to make 24 copies, 12 black and white, 12 color, and send it to JPL. And from there on, it's a huge mystery, a huge, huge mystery, because JPL, when I talk to them, they say
that they only studied brains and that they were only studying the classic gunman image. And as a matter of fact, when Mo Weitzman came back after a long weekend and UPI had closed down, he went to look for the Rolodex to call JPL to say, hey, did you get the films? Is everything okay? And he was told that that was a government entity and they could no longer speak to him about this. And he just let it go. He went and looked, and not only were his Rolodex entries missing, but so were the Nix Film file that he had. And he never thought anything else of it because he had been paid. And like I said, he wasn't interested, and like he said, he wasn't interested in the JFK assassination anyway. But all of this testimony can be found in the ARRB. And that this man who had nothing, no agenda, no anything, can see a figure in a place that no other taxpayer-paid commission had seen is outstanding to me. I mean, it's just... to me, there's maybe the reason why the film is missing. It could be. When I asked JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, when I asked them for a copy of the report, guess what, Brent? No such thing.
Oh, come on. Really? No. Is that what they told you? And by the way, folks, JPL, Jet Propulsion League, is NASA.
Right.
The same guys that claim that there's no aliens and there's no pictures of not aliens, but UFOs, and yet all the astronauts say there is.
Brent, there is so much more to the Nix film and its history than people know. There is so, and I promise you, even if you don't like the way I write, even if you don't like, just knowing what I know and what my family knows and what we have been through is enough to say, wait a minute, shouldn't we be questioning this, and shouldn't we be trying to find this film? I mean, shouldn't we? It's a piece of evidence. We paid, what, $16 million to the Zapruder family to have theirs chosen as evidence and put it into the National Archives, yet the Nix film, which is another piece of evidence, is gone? It doesn't make sense to me. Does it to you?
Not at all.
No.
No, not at all. And, you know, it reminds me, you know Beverly Oliver.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's another 19-year-old blonde bombshell from Texas as well, folks.
Now, wait a minute. She really was one, okay? She really was.
She was only 17 at the time. Actually, she was in Dealey Plaza. She was filming as well that day from the south side looking north, and the FBI took her camera. Doesn't this sound familiar? She's never seen the film. She's never seen the camera since. And, you know, this is alarming that all this documentation, all this evidence has disappeared.
There's another one. There's the Cravens film. And Mr. Cravens was on the press, in the press. I mean, in the car. And his is gone. Why is this? I mean, coincidence is one thing, but this is a little too coincidental. Wouldn't you say? I mean.
Oh, completely. Yeah. Yeah.
Ridiculous. Too much missing evidence.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right. That's right. Now, speaking of smoke and fire, my grandfather never saw smoke. My grandfather never smelled smoke. But let's just be honest, Brent, this is Texas, and rifles don't really blow out smoke. Now, a revolver might. I mean, I would. I mean, but not, rifles don't normally do that. Yeah, you know, but he never, I wanted to throw that in there. He never saw a rifle, nor saw or smelled smoke. So, people have asked me that before, and I just wanted to get that one out there. No, he didn't. So, but you know what? He was way on the other side. Like I said, on the other side of Maine. And not only, there's another thing about him being on the other side of Maine. If you go to Dealey Plaza, it's almost like an upside down bowl. It's kind of like New Orleans. It's what it reminds me of. Acoustically, I mean. And noises in Dealey Plaza kind of echo in a strange way, because I think the pergolas and the colonnades and all of the, you know, that's around there, the way that it's situated. Mm-hmm. But that would have not affected my grandfather where he was, because he was not in the bowl per se. He was, you know, way out.
Peripherals. Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to throw that in there too, because people say, well, your grandfather may not have heard. He always said there were more than 4 shots. Always. And when I tell that to people, they say, oh, well, maybe he just thought he heard more than 4. And I said, well, I used to think that, but after studying it and being down there so many times, I just don't see it, It wouldn't have affected him. Like you said, he was on the periphery of it all.
One of the things, I was there, folks, for the 50th anniversary, and I'm going to have to brag a little bit now because I was the only Canadian invited to talk.
Oh, congratulations.
That's okay. Thank you very much. And what I did for Canadians, and you'll be very familiar with this, November 11th is our Remembrance Day, which I think in the United States, forgive me, folks, if I get this one wrong, but I think it's Veterans Day. Is that not right? November 11th?
I think so, too. But no, wait a minute. It's the 7th. Wait, it's the 9th.
It's the 9th. Okay, so it's around the same time. November 11th, we celebrate our veterans because that was when the First World War ended, on November 11th. And Canadians have a tradition of wearing poppies to remember the fallen and those who fell for peace. So just to let you know, Canadians, I planted a poppy at the memorial for JFK. I thought it was apropos. Coming from Canada, it would be distinctively recognizable and also not gaudy or anything of that. And let's face it, if there was anybody who stood and fell for peace, it was JFK. All that to say is when I was in Dealey Plaza, what struck me was not only the small size of it, because we all see it like everybody else through the Zapruder film, or we'll see other films or pictures of it. The main thing that shocked me was how steep the grade was. And what that did was elevated JFK almost above everybody else that was in the car. It made him stand out, like he was standing up. The grade is that steep. It's a steep, steep hill. And, it just shocked me. It made me think that this thing was planned out and this location was chosen for various reasons. And, I think we're going to get some kind of validation for that in the very, very near future. We'll see.
I sure hope so.
Just to let you know, folks, in my books with Sorensen, it's his last interview, and he makes reference to the assassination. He doesn't name names, but coming from the inner circle, all I can tell you is that he names institutions, spy institutions. How's that? Am I being politically correct? That are in the United States. And he confirms, in my opinion, conspiracy, but perhaps not a coup d'etat. Anyways, I'll let you be the judge of that. You can see his own words by himself in the book, JFK. On both books tonight, folks, can be got at the www.nightfrightshow.com website. Just click on Gayle's book. Go get that book. And while you're at Amazon, just flip over it, and you can get my book, too, at the same time. How's that? I think, actually, if you do that, if I'm not mistaken, at Amazon, I think they give you free shipping. Anyways. Yeah, I think so.
I'm going to order yours tonight. Now that I know, I'm going to get it tonight.
You're so sweet. Okay, so I'll have to get yours, too. So there. You get mine, I'll get yours.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I wanted to mention, too, Robert Grodin's been on the show. Fans of the show will know Robert's been on the show. He was involved with the movie JFK, Oliver Stone. He was his senior consultant. He walked Oliver Stone through the whole scenario that took place in Dealey Plaza. He was fully integrated with that. He also brought forward the Zapruder film for its very first showing on the Geraldo show.
75.
75, yep. And that created a storm of sorts. Have you ever put the two films back to back to see if they line up, Gayle?
I have. And there are such, let me just give a little shout out if you don't mind. There are some really, Brent, I tell you, one of my goals is to try and get a younger generation involved in all of this. There are some really wise, smart, detailed, tenacious researchers out there right now. One of them I would like to talk about is 22 November Network. It's a group of girls, guys, they're from all over the world, working together, trying to find out what's going on. If you go to the JFK Assassination Forum, my goodness, Rick Needham, Martin Hendricks, Robin Unger, there are such smart people there, all not always working together. They argue a little bit, but showing different things about the Nix film and about the Zapruder film. There are young people right now in Canada, your country, Trish Fleming, Zach Gendro, Dennis Morissette. I can't even tell you how many. They are astounding, Brent, in what they're coming up with. And what they're doing is going from the works of Penn Jones, Harold Weisberg, Sylvia Mark Lane. I mean, they're looking at the things that these people, I think the answer is already there. They're just putting together the puzzle pieces amongst it all. And it's very exciting to me. I am so lucky and honored to know these kids. And I call them kids. They're in their 30s, and but they are such. It gives me hope. You know, I mean, so many people said, "Oh, who cares? Well, the 50th anniversary is going to come and go. No one will care." Yeah, we care. We want to know the truth. We're tired of not hearing the truth. And here's the way I look at it, Brent. As a country, let's just go with the U.S., okay? As a country, if we can get past slavery, if we can get past child labor laws, if we can get past World War II Japanese Americans being in retention centers, we can get past this. We are not weak people. The world is not a weak world. We can handle the truth. How come Germany can get through the Holocaust and acknowledge, yeah, we screwed up, I mean, and move on, and we can't, as Americans, get past the JFK assassination? Why is that?
What's your perspective? Why do you think that is?
I think that...
Why is it so taboo?
Embarrassing. I think sometimes embarrassment, maybe, and I also think, I've got a lot of reasons here. I think that when people were trying to protect the Kennedy family, which, you know what, that's a noble thing. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And sometimes when we protect, we hurt others, you know? As far as the institution you were discussing earlier with Sorensen, I think they are so involved with the military-industrial complex, and there's so much money, there's so much power that they don't want to lose it. And come on, that's Machiavelli from the word go. I just think that if we don't learn from our history, we're destined to repeat it. And we have a chance here to not only learn from our history, but to fix it. Yeah, you know, and we're just all remiss if we don't do what we can to make this right, you know? Agreed completely. I'm on a soapbox, aren't I?
No, not at all. And I'm right there with you. Don't worry. And I think most of the world is too, including the American population. I don't think that, you know, the truth went out. And I'm very happy to hear that there's some new investigators taking the torch, because as Ted Sorensen wrote for JFK, the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans. And it's nice to see in the 21st century somebody giving a damn. Yeah,
I totally agree.
The Kardashians.
Well, but please, I know, isn't that horrible? Oh,
how did we get from there to here? I don't know.
I began my enlightenment with my own children, one who's 18 and one that will soon be 15. And poor kids, I mean, they've had to listen to it for me. I'm like, okay, your job, after I'm gone, excuse me, you are to pick up what I've been doing, and until you find the Nix film or find out what happened to it, just whatever, it's your job. You know, you owe it to me, you owe it to the world, you owe it to your great-grandfather, you owe it to your grandfather. You have to do it. And they're all aboard. My daughter made a wonderful video about the Nix film asking why. I'm very proud of her. It's on my website.
If it's okay with you, I'll put a link to that on our website.
Oh, that would be great, Brent. Yes.
Sure, absolutely.
She did a great job. And I just think that these people, we need to encourage them, Brent. You know, we need to, these new researchers, we need to say, look, you're doing a great job. Come on, more, more, more. And I do believe, John Barber might disagree with me, but I do believe, and I love John Barber, by the way.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
And he's Canadian. Did you know that?
Oh, well, yeah.
But he doesn't say about anymore. He told me it took 20 years to get rid of it. So I'm in awe and jealousy of him.
See, I have to be nice to him. And he knows me anyway because I'm in his video and, you know, on the Trail of the Assassins. And back then I had the 90s hairdo. God help me. And still they had no cosmetic surgery lens. And so I'm, you know, every time he plays that, I cringe. But anyway, John says, Gayle, I don't know if the media is going to change or not. You know what, Brent? I think it is. I see a slight shift, and I'm hoping that it catches on, that there are people in the media who are like us, who are like, wait a minute, this can't be right. And we don't have to worry about, you know, who to talk to. Our sponsors will still sponsor us. I mean, the government's not running us, even though maybe the government still is in many ways. I don't think they are with all of them. And I think if the media catches hold and starts telling the truth, I don't know. I think that we can see the pendulum moving back now, and I'm kind of happy about it. I think we're in the right place at the right time, Brent. I think we are.
I hope so. We're going to come up to break in just 4 minutes, and I want to get this in before we do. Folks, I want to thank Kelly Logue, because Kelly Logue lives up in Juneau, Alaska, and he puts together our website every week, and he volunteers to do that. He's an amazing guy. He's writing a book as well, and as soon as the book is available, he's going to be the first one on the show, let me tell you. And I've seen excerpts of it, and it's fantastic.
Is he another new generation?
He is. He's not writing a JFK book. He's writing more of a suspense book. But he certainly gives a darn, that's for sure. And, you know, that's all we can ask is question everything. If anything the 60s taught me, it was question everything. Turn it upside down and all around, and then look at it again. www.nightfrightshow, folks. Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film. Our guest tonight is Gayle Nix Jackson. Just click on the book cover associated with tonight's guest, and that'll take you right to a spot where you can order the book from the comfort of your own home. And let's hope you've got the air conditioning going, because I had to turn it off tonight. And I tell you, honest to God, it's like 1,000,000 degrees here. And I just feel like going down and jumping in Lake Ontario and going for a swim. But God knows what kind of creatures live in there. Yeah, there was this big thing last week where somebody said they saw a shark in Lake Ontario. Oh, God.
Oh, my.
You know, yeah, I mean, you know, we're the land of sharks, folks, and I'm going to pick on Rob Ford again. I mean, good God, you know, and Justin Bieber's Canadian, too. So, you know, we're not stereotypical. You know, we do have some color going on in this country as well. When we come back after the break, I'm going to ask Gayle about Texas Oilman, the power structure in Dallas, and what she's found out in her riveting new book called Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film. And their possible, perhaps, we'll examine it, we're going to take a look at it, involvement in certain aspects of the assassination, and stay tuned for that, because that's going to be very explosive. More subjects coming up about the JFK assassination in the next hour, folks. Stick around. I'm just waiting for the music to start because it's all automated. I tried to stretch this out and time it perfectly to make it sound, you know, somewhat legible. And come on, music, where are you? So we're going to be talking about that. I want to ask her opinion also of if she thinks she knows who may be behind the assassination after all this time, and when we may expect some kind of disclosure on this mystery that's been going on. Also, I'm going to ask her when we come back if there's any connection in her mind between the three assassinations, and I'm referring to, of course, Bobby's and Martin Luther King's. And there's the music. Don't go anywhere, Gayle. You just stay tuned there. 6 minutes of commercials. Brent Holland from Night Fright. We'll be right back. See you all soon. Welcome back, folks. I'm Brent Holland. Welcome back to Night Fright. Get the coffee going, get the tea going, but put ice in it and get a cold, cold drink going because it's 1,000,000 degrees here in Canada. And I'm telling you, I swear to God, we're like a mile from the sun. And it's a hot one tonight, and I wish I could put the air conditioning on, but unfortunately that would cover what we're talking about tonight, which is essential listening. Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film, is the book. Our guest tonight, Gayle Nix Jackson. Now, Gayle's grandfather was in Dealey Plaza November 22nd, 1963. He took video, he took film, wasn't video back then even, it was film, of the Kennedy assassination as it was taking place, just as he was crossing, JFK was crossing in front of what we've all come to know as the Grassy Knoll. Now, what's shocking is that original film has disappeared, and when Orville Nix, the grandfather of Gayle, saw the film, when it finally got back to him, he thought it looked different, and that's what we're discussing tonight. We're also going to be looking at Gayle's book and the possibility of the involvement of Texas oil money and men, the power structure that was taking place in those times. Also, we're going to be looking at the possible connection between all three assassinations: the Martin Luther King assassination, the Bobby assassination, the JFK. See if there's any connections there. And I'm going to ask Gayle the speculation on who was behind it. But before we go anywhere, we've got to tell that funny Mark Lane story.
Oh, okay.
Before we do that, I have a funny Jim Marrs story. Because
Oh,
I know you
good.
know
Okay.
Jim, and he's a sweetheart of a guy.
Oh, he
And
is.
yeah, you'll find his shows in the www.nightfrightshow.com archives as well. When we were off air, when I interviewed him last, I said, just give me 5 minutes. I've got to get a cup of coffee, Jim, before we start. And he said, sure. So I came back, and he said, did you get your coffee? And I said, yeah. I said, you going to get one? He says, no. He said, I've already got one going. He said, except mine has a head on it. You got to love those Texas guys.
Oh, yeah. Jim is the best.
Oh, he's hilarious.
Oh, I love him. Love him.
Tell us about Mark Lane.
Okay. It actually, it wasn't me. It kind of was me. My grandmother, when he came to interview my grandfather for Rush to Judgment,
Right.
you know, back in the day, the cameras were huge, Brent. You remember? I mean, they were huge.
Yeah.
And the cameraman came in, and my grandmother and grandfather lived in a small place. And so when they brought the camera in, my grandmother was all, like I said before, she didn't want my grandfather doing this interview anyway. And here comes Mark Lane, this Yankee, mind you. And that's how
it's from New York, folks.
yeah, so he's a Yankee. With this huge camera. So Mark sits and talks to my grandfather. My grandfather's at ease. And I would like to say this, too, while I'm thinking about this on a serious note. So many people have said Mark Lane put words in people's mouths. Maybe he did, but for my grandfather, he was not one of them. I just want to say that because my grandfather really liked him. Anyway, as Mark was leaving, the cameraman, and you know, I think it was Emilio de San Antonio. I think it was. I'm not sure, but I think it was. Hit my grandmother's wall, God forbid, with the camera and left a huge black mark on it. You know what she did in her great Texas fashion?
Uh-oh.
She grabbed a broom and shooed them out of her house.
Oh,
With a broom.
Get the Yankees
I'm sure Mark Lane was thinking, do you know who I am? And you're shooting me out with a broom? My grandmother could care less. All she knew was that she had a big black mark on her wall that she didn't know how she was going to get out, you know? So
that's priceless. That's funny.
Yeah, when we were on Geraldo, Mark, you know, I think Jim was there too. Robert Groden, I can't remember. They were all men and me. And they all kept talking and talking and talking and talking. And I was, needless to say, becoming very impatient because I had to leave grad school to come up there and do it. And I thought, okay, is he ever going to talk to me ever? And I would look at Mark and I would say, why? Can I talk? I mean, would you please give me a chance to talk? And but he would just kind of look at me like, you know, no, you know, I'm talking. And so finally, Geraldo came over. I'm telling you 2 stories. I'm sorry. I was only
That's
going to be...
good. That's fine. Don't worry.
So Geraldo came over to me, and he said, I promise you, Miss Nix Jackson, we're going to get to you. I mean, we're going to get to you. And I said, you know, you really could have done a video. I'm such a pushy woman. I said, we really could have done a video relay from Dallas. I mean, couldn't we have? I mean, you were just talking to all these men, and you won't even give me a chance to say anything. And he started laughing. And he said, oh, well, Mr. Lane has a lot to say. And I said, well, Mr. Lane does not want me to bring up my grandmother and the broom story, I'm sure. And Geraldo just kind of died laughing. He goes, you know, I've heard about you Texas women. Yeah, y'all are not people to be messed with. And I said, that's right. So there's 2 stories.
That's hilarious.
Mark Lane, there may be a reason why he doesn't always return my calls, Brent. There may be a reason.
That's okay. You're not, you know, your grandmother's not the first woman I've known with a broom, so that's okay. I'll just let it go at that, folks. We're talking to Gayle Nix Jackson. The book's called Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film. You can get our book at www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on tonight's guest book cover. That'll take you right to a spot where you can order her book from the comfort of your own home. And while you're there...
I forgot to say this, Brent.
Sure.
I forgot. Okay. I also have not very many left. I don't have very many left. But I have hardcovers that I had printed.
Yeah.
And are first edition, and they're autographed, but you have to get those from me. So
okay, so you know,
I don't have them in a bookstore.
Well, I'll tell you what. Then what we're going to do is not only we're going to put the link to your daughter's video on our site, but we'll put the link directly to your website as well.
Oh, thank you, Brent.
So you know, folks, there's a double. I mean, how great is that? A hardcover book signed by the author. That's collector's. That's collector's item, folks. I would encourage you all to do that. Absolutely, without question. And, geez, I better talk with Deb from Lancer. Maybe I could do something like that. Thanks for the idea, Gayle.
That's right. That's what you need to do. I'm old school. I like the hardcovers with the dust jackets and all those things, you know. I like that.
I like that, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Deborah Conway, folks, puts together JFK Lancer. That's a fantastic resource on the web.
Yes.
For all things JFK, and
she's beautiful, and she's intelligent, and she is a great person.
You know, and here's another 19-year-old too. All these Texas women are so hot, and they're all 19. You know,
and all blonde.
And all blonde. And this is why I head down to the Lancer conference every year. It's for the women, folks. It's not for the research. Trust me. You know, up here in Canada, all the women at that time, November, they're all wearing parkas and big boots. So it's nice to get out to civilization. Okay, let's get down to some of the research. What surprised you when you were doing the research and you came upon the Texas oil men and the whole power structure in Dallas in those days?
Oh, my. You know, because I was so young in the 60s, I had no idea. H.L. Hunt, stop it. I mean, this man, oh, my goodness. This man could have been an emperor. You know, when I read about him, some days I think Napoleon. I really do. I mean, he was a frugal man like my grandfather, honestly, but had millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And he was in charge and had his finger in most every single thing, Brent. I mean, from the Dallas World Council to what is rumored Suite 8F. I mean, you know, are you familiar with Suite 8F down there?
Oh, what is that? I apologize.
That's in Houston. There was a group of oil men who would go down there and discuss how they were going to run Texas. And H.L. Hunt was one, and Sid Richardson was one, and Neil Mallon, George Bush's friend, was one, and Clint Murchison.
Oh, sure.
And just so you know, everybody says Murchison. The Texas way, people, is Murchison with a hard CH.
Okay.
Murchison. Yeah. In fact, do you know that there's a town in East Texas named after him? It's called Murchison. Yeah. Murchison, Texas. But anyway, these men, you know, they had the politicos under their thumb. I mean, because they had all this oil money. D.H. Byrd, who owned the Texas School Book Depository. I mean, they had all this money, and they could decide who to give their money to and who would be, you know, going to be the next president and who wouldn't be, or who would be the next governor or who wouldn't be. And they would just dangle that money like carrots in front of donkeys. You know, that's what they would do. And it was very strange to me when I was doing all this research. I noticed, you know, the movie The Perfect Storm.
Sure,
that's
of course,
pretty much what Dallas was like for JFK. It's a horrible way to give the illusion or the metaphor, but it really was. I mean, you had the Texas oilmen down here doing their thing. You had the military-industrial complex. I mean, we're the land of Bell Helicopter and Boeing and Texas Instruments, and, you know, everything that the military used was down here. And we depended on that money, that federal money, for, you know, to keep these businesses going. And then you had the right-wingers, which would be the John Birch Society and Edwin Walker. And my goodness, Brent, all of them at one time or another seems to have some little something to do with the JFK assassination. Then you have on the periphery the Dallas police, who didn't much care for JFK. Ruby, who, though he said he was shooting Oswald because he felt badly for Jacqueline and her kids, like Beverly has said, she knew him. He told her he couldn't stand JFK, you know? So everyone's telling lies. Everyone's doing their own thing, all for power, greed, money. And it's kind of hard to pinpoint which group had the most to gain from it. Then you've got the 488s.
Yeah.
From down there, General Whitmire was riding in the pilot car with Police Chief Lumpkin. That's never ever talked about. But why was he? Why was he in the pilot car? Why was he even here? Then of course you have JM Wave. You've got the guys there that were Cuban.
Exiles.
What is the word? Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
JM Wave was out of Florida, folks, and it was run by the CIA, and they were training Cuban exiles after the initial Bay of Pigs to go back into Cuba, and they were running something called Operation Mongoose as well, where the mafia was involved, military-industrial complex, military intelligence, the CIA, and a whole cast of characters.
Oh,
up to no good. Yeah. Now,
these agents, regular agents, I mean, come on. Dallas was a hotbed. I mean, it really was, you know.
What was the threat that JFK presented to these Texas oil guys?
Oh, the oil depletion tax. You know, they had watched their buddies up there, Rockefeller, and, you know, watched them go down with the coal taxes. And they were like, oh, this isn't happening down here. No, no, no. We like our oil depletion tax, obviously. You know, we're one of the few states still that has no income tax. And that's why there's so much oil and gas and all down here. There's a lot of money in well, everybody knows that, in that business. And JFK was threatening getting rid of the oil depletion tax. Well, you know, that would have taken a big hunk out of Mr. Murchison and Mr. Hunt and Mr. Byrd's holdings, you know.
It would have cost a pretty penny.
They didn't want that to happen. So, Brent, anytime that you start messing around with someone's, okay, I won't be too frank. Okay, we'll just stop with two.
No, it's not frank, baby. Go ahead, be as frank.
Okay, sex, money, and power. Anytime, I mean, those things are involved. Wow, you can just be assured something bad's going to come right behind it. You know, you threaten any of those things, and that's what happens. You know, it's kind of that way with marriage too, isn't it? Okay, I didn't say that. You can edit this out, right?
No, it's staying in. You're stuck with it now. There's going to be quotes all over the internet. Did you hear what Gayle said on Fright? By the way,
my husband's going to say, no more interviews for you. No more.
A little trivia for the listeners. Guess which country supplies the most oil to the United States? Saudi Arabia?
Are you going to say?
Yeah, I'm going to say in a second. I'm just wondering if you know. You may know. It's not Saudi Arabia. It's not Iraq. It's not Iran. It's Canada.
Right.
Yep.
The pipeline, remember?
Right. Yep. And that all comes out of Alberta. And Alberta is the only province, we don't have states in Canada, we have provinces, same idea,
Right.
that doesn't pay tax. So that's why there's a big gold rush going on in Alberta right now. And trust me, Canadians are taxed. Oh, my goodness. There's a tax on air, I think, to be honest with you. Yep. We also have the most...
We don't much care for taxes in Texas very much. Well, no one cares for taxes, but we're pretty adamant about it down here.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. You know, if paying tax is okay if we feel we're getting the services for it. But when was the last time you felt good about paying a tax because it was going to the people that needed it?
Right.
Yeah, I can't remember that last time. Folks, we're looking at a great new book with a great new author, Gayle Nix Jackson. The book is called Orville Nix and the Missing JFK Assassination Film, www.nightfrightshow.com. Order the book from the comfort of your own home. Just click on the book cover, and that'll take you right to a spot where you can order it from Amazon. And while you're there, order my book, JFK Assassination, from the Oval Office to Dealey Plaza. And if you order the two of them, I'm pretty sure Amazon will cut you a deal. If not free for transportation, for shipping, I'm sure it would be at a reduced price. So there you go. There's a double reason to order both books. Let's talk about your speculation if the Bobby assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination, and the JFK assassination, if there's any connection, the same names floating around.
You know, I believe so, but I'm going to be honest with you, Brent. I am not well versed on the RFK or MLK assassinations, but there is a new book out called Two Princes and a King by Carmine Salvestano, and here I'm pushing his book, but
no, that's fine.
He's writing about all three and how they connect, and it's a really good book. I have not had the chance. I'm just so busy looking for my grandfather's film, and I haven't had the chance to really study it. But it looks to me logically like that decade of assassinations was a warning of sorts to Americans. Maybe I look at it that way. Or maybe not so much to Americans, but to the world, or maybe just to anyone who wanted to disagree with those in power, you know? Again, Machiavellian to me. It really is. I look back at it, and those are more things that we need to change and we need to own up to and say, okay, yeah, we did it. I mean, whoever it was it Allen Dulles? Was it General Lansdale? Was it LeMay? I don't know. I don't know. But they all had reasons for it to happen, in my opinion. I mean, they all liked where they were. They had so much power. So much power. They could do anything. Think of our NSA now. Think of the NSA. Think of Homeland Security. These people have so much power. And they're protected by the laws that we passed through Congress, saying, okay, yeah, for terrorism, we've got to fight against terrorism. So to do that, we need to be able to hear phone conversations. We need to know who's doing what. And I don't mean it to sound, and this is probably not a good analogy, but we were protecting the Kennedy family in many ways. I mean, I do feel like some of the media felt they were. And I do feel like some of the government felt they were. But it ended up badly, and now here we're doing it again. We're protecting our country or the world, but we're not. I mean, we're hurting. You know, we're hurting our country and the world by using these surreptitious and terrible ways of taking away our freedoms. You know?
Yeah, it's Big Brother, isn't it?
Oh my gosh! And you know, I used to be an English professor. Oh my gosh. It's scary to me sometimes when I think about it. Teaching those books, you know, and here we are living it, and oh my goodness, it's very scary to me. I don't know why everyone's not scared of this. I mean, I don't want to sound paranoid because I'm not. I'm really not. I don't walk out at night or every day looking up to see if there's any black ops circling me. You know, I don't do that. But I do feel like if we just keep sticking our heads in the sand and watching Kardashians and Paris Hiltons and, you know, red carpets, I mean, we're not going to know what's going on in the world. And that's our fault. But that is our fault. It's our choice for not doing something about it, you know?
Is there a conscious effort, and this is just speculation, but because we're just talking, on the media's part to dumb down the news to the lowest common denominator?
Well, you know, in graduate school, and I studied rhetoric, I mean, one of the things that we were taught early on was you've got to keep it at a fifth grade level. No one will understand if it's not at a fifth grade level. And I don't know that that's changed, Brent. I don't know that it's been many years since I've been in grad school, but I don't know that that's changed. If you look at what I used to tell my students is watch the commercials, watch what audience they're, you know, after, watch how they're talking to you, pay attention to the movies that are being made and what they're trying to say in these movies. Have you noticed there's so many dystopian movies lately?
Yeah,
I mean, like the Hunger Games. And I think that is a reflection of the sadness we all feel about what's going on. And I do believe that Hollywood's a little ahead of that. I mean, that's not to say that they still don't make huge mistakes like Parkland, but did I say that?
That's all right. You're allowed to say that. I'm no Bugliosi fan. That's for sure.
I did not say that. See, I'm going to be in such trouble.
No, not with me, you weren't.
I do see it. If you're philosophical for a moment, if you'll just stand back and analyze it, you can see it. And I just think that, like I said earlier when we were speaking, the pendulum is kind of swinging back our way a little bit. Or at least I hope it is. I'm a bit of an idealist.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a Boy Scout too. And, you know, after meeting Ted and speaking with him and, I can't believe I spent the whole afternoon in his Manhattan apartment. And this is a guy from the projects, by the way, folks.
I'm jealous, really.
He had a doorman open the door for me.
Wow.
I've never had that in my life. Anyways, yeah, the idealism is something that he and JFK shared. And I think it was really an era when we felt that we could conquer the world with peace and love.
Right.
And we really felt that there was honest change about to happen. What change do you feel, not only in America, but around the world, November 22nd, 1963?
You know, have you ever seen a person, this is a sad thing, really, have you ever seen a person lose their hope?
Yes.
Or lose their cynicism, I mean, become cynical? It's like it happens in a blink of an eye. And I think that's what happened. It's very sad. It's very sad. And I think that that's what happened. And I'm going to say this, and I'm a good American. I love my country. I think that's why this upsets me so, because I expect more out of this country. I think the Europeans jumped on it before we did, Brent, before the Canadians, North Americans, before we did. I
agree.
They were aware, and it's because they've been around much longer than we have over here. So they've seen it happen over and over and over, you know? Political assassinations for greed, back to those three things I said.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen it happen over and over, and they knew right away what was going on. And I think that that's why there's such an interest over there in the JFK assassination. They're wanting to know, are we going to come to a conclusion? Are we going to figure out who really did this? And they help. Right? I mean, there are plenty of people overseas who want to know and want to know the truth too, you know?
I am ever optimistic that with the advent of the internet that we're gaining something called data mining, where you just plug in somebody's name and then all these connections come up that you've never seen before.
Right.
And all of a sudden you start putting the pieces together and you realize, wow, this is really the deep end of the pool. There is more going on here than just what took place in Dealey Plaza. There was some serious power moves here going on.
Oh, yes.
And we had alluded to that before. Any speculation on your part on who was behind the assassination?
Just those ones that I mentioned before. You know, like I said, Brent, I try and stay really open-minded, and of all those groups I mentioned, not a one of those would surprise me at all. Not at all. I want to say something, too, that I had meant to mention to you earlier.
Please.
Because I do live in Dallas, and because the book has come out, I have spoken with many people who were around during that time, who have shared stories with me that people don't know. I mean, there were many people in Dallas who were scared to talk about what they know or what they knew or what they saw. And I know as a young person, as a young adult, when I would go to another state, of course, I'd just open my mouth and they would hear me say a long I sound and know I was from Texas. And they would say, oh, my God, you're from Dallas. Y'all are the place where you killed Kennedy. And, you know, that did not change until Dallas, that TV show Dallas came out. And then everybody started asking who shot JR. Thank God. I mean, they were asking who shot JR instead of who shot JFK. And honestly, there's something good about that and there's something bad. That kind of shows the mindset that we were moving to, you know? And I think the powers that be in Dallas were happy that it was that way.
It took the focus off them.
Right. Even still, they don't want, well, you were there at the 50th anniversary. They don't want to acknowledge what happened here. It was such a huge scar on our city. And, you know, Dallas is a great city. I mean, it really is. And it's sad that happened. But the scar that I'm talking about is not just on Dallas, not just on Texas, not just on the U.S., Canada. It's a world scar. And if we don't find the truth, if we don't get answers to why there's so much missing evidence, so many things that should be answered, that scar is going to keep opening and opening. It will never heal. And if it can't heal, how are we all supposed to heal? You know?
Absolutely. It was a global catastrophe.
Yes, it was. You have Hiroshima, you have the Jews being killed, and I mean, these are all major things. But like I said, we've all come to terms with those others, but not this one. And I don't understand why we can't, you know? Now, the Warren Commission apologists would say, well, we have. The Warren Commission was right. No, they weren't right. No, they weren't. I can point out, in fact, in my book, one of the chapters is 50 reasons, why the Warren Commission was wrong. I mean, 50. And I probably could have written 150. But I thought, well, 50, you know?
50 for 50. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you.
Right.
You know, I mean, the Warren Commission was so obviously set up to appease and placate the public to ward off any suspicion of a possible coup, of a Soviet intervention and taking out the president, a Cuban intervention and taking out the president. It was so obvious that it was a setup. I mean, there was 2 Warren Commissions. We had talked off air about James Tague, and James was on the show. James Tague, folks, was the 3rd person wounded in Dealey Plaza that day, and he became inadvertently responsible for the magic bullet. The first Warren Commission had 3 shells, which meant 3 bullets. And they accounted for those bullets, 2 hitting Kennedy and 1 hitting Governor Connolly. Well, all of a sudden, James Tague bravely steps forward just as that report's about to come out, and they have to say, uh-oh, now we've got 4 wounds with only 3 bullets. So they said, okay, we know for sure one of the bullets is the kill shot on JFK. That accounts for 1. We've got 2 left. One of the shots ricocheted and hit James Tague. That's 2. So now we've got 7 wounds left between Kennedy and Governor Connolly with 1 bullet. Now, what kind of horse dung is that? And that's
a nice way to say it, horse dung.
Well, I mean, come on. Do they really believe that the American people are so naive and stupid to believe that crazy thing?
And that's what makes me mad. That right there is what makes me mad. How dare they think we're that stupid? I mean, that's what makes me the maddest, really. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I say this all the time on my show, and it's meant for North Americans, both Canadians and Americans. Democracy is this precious little gem we've been given out of all the generations before us. We have this thing called democracy where we, the people, the three most powerful words ever spoken,
That's right.
are in charge. If we get a bad leader, we can get rid of them by the power of the vote. We don't have to change for them like a monarchy. Now, what's important, though, is we have to be proactive in a democracy. We have to get out there and vote and challenge everything. And many people forget that we don't work for the government. They work for us.
Yes, indeed.
We all have a small business. Well, in Canada, it's a big business, trust me. But they work for us. And don't let them ever try and tell you that it's the other way around. And be proactive and question everything and get Gayle Nix Jackson's book. It's called Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film, www.nightfrightshow.com. Go there. You're going to find the book cover for Gayle's book. Just order it online by clicking on the book cover. That'll take you right to a spot where you can order it from the comfort of your own home. Gayle, when you were doing your research and outlining the book, were there some surprises along the way that you had to say, oh, geez, I've got to juggle this because this part's important, this part's important. How do I put it all together in a single flowing narrative?
You know what, Brent? The one that stood out to me, there were two. I'm lying. Okay, there were two. First off was the one I had mentioned before about Red Bandana Man. That one just
that's amazing.
Blew me away. I still I can't believe it. In fact, when I had my book launch party, the people that came, when they bought a book, I had a red bandana in it because I wanted them to know that was really important. I put one in the book, a real red bandana. But anyway, the other one that I found very, very enlightening was that, Brent, 8 frames of my grandfather's film, they studied 8 frames. I mean, come on. There's so many frames. I mean, the film is only like 8 or 9 seconds long to begin with. But 8 frames, I mean, that's just hardly a second that they studied. And all of these commissions and all of these people, and they don't look at the whole film? Why? Why? That one is the one that bugged me the most because I had no idea. And when I talked to Dr. Clyde Snow, God rest his soul, he just passed away not too long ago. He worked for the House Select Committee. He was on the photo panel. And he was so kind. He lived in Oklahoma. We talked for a couple of hours, actually. Well, you know me, I can talk. And he said to me, he said, Gayle, honestly, I think back to those days because that was a big time in my life. And Brent, as we get older, I mean, we do lose fine detail. We do lose, but the things that are meaningful to us, we don't forget those things. I mean, we don't forget
Exactly
what was going on during that time. And he said, I never saw your grandfather's film, not one time. I saw frames. And that astounded me. So I called Dr. Paul Rutling, who also was on the photo committee, said the same thing, Brent. And so then I thought, wait a minute, there's a pattern going on here. What is going on? So then I called JPL, same thing. Talked to Dr. Kenneth Castleman, who was in charge there at JPL of looking at the film. 8 frames. Is this what they were told to say? Or is this, I don't understand it. I don't understand. And when I talked to Mr. Schoenfeld, who was at UPI, when UPI closed, he went on to begin CNN with Ted Turner and Burt Reinhardt. Some people would say follow the power and the money. I would be one of those people. But anyway,
that's all.
And he also started the Food Network, by the way. But anyway, when I asked him about it, he was very kind to me. But he said, oh, no, Gayle, I don't remember any of that. I don't remember. So you get one of the two things. You get, okay, we only studied 8 frames, or I don't remember. It's like the rote answer for everything involving the Nix film. over the years, I have called President Fox in Mexico. I have spoken with sheikhs in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, England, Louis Stokes, Robert Blakey. I mean, I have talked to so many people who at one time or another I was told or was advised may have had part of the Nix film, and to no avail. I mean, no one knows what happened to it. Now, I will tell you, do you know Chris Scally? He's a researcher in Ireland.
Right.
He has done a wonderful chronology on the Nix film, and he has studied, and what he has broken it down to is a time frame, a window between like 1973 and 1976 that it came up missing. Now, that part we do know. And that's right before the House Select Committee or during, and after executive action. So it's right there in that time frame.
That's pretty red flaggish. And by the way, folks, the House Select Committee, was it 75 or 76?
75, I believe. Wasn't it over? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, you know, that it would take place because I think executive action was 73, 74, 72.
It was 72.
Yeah. So that's pretty alarming.
Yes, it is.
Put it mildly. Now, have you ever been threatened yourself?
Never. I've never at all. I have had people say, "Oh, I can tell you where the Nix film is. How much money have you got?" I mean, you know, those kind of phone calls. But no, I've never been threatened at all. And why would I? I mean, the film is gone. They think, "Oh well, she just can just keep looking," and that's what I do now. I have had my sister and brother say, "Okay, you've got all this education. Why are you not teaching college somewhere? You're chasing after this film." And I said, because I promised Papa I would do it. And I really do feel that I need to. He depended on me to do it. And so many people believe that, well, Gayle, you're never going to find it. It's been shredded like Oliver Northwood. I mean, with papers, you know? Yeah. Or
maybe not. Maybe not.
Someone's souvenir. Someone took it as a souvenir. Or it's been hidden away like Rosebud and Citizen Kane. I mean, there's all kinds of things I've heard, but like I told you, I am an idealist, and I think that it's out there. I just do. I think it's out there.
Sounds like an honorable quest to me, without question. What's next for you? What is the next step for you to take?
Well, other than to continue my looking for the film, I have mine's threefold. Honestly, I'm really wanting to push a new generation, like I mentioned earlier, of picking up the reins and carrying on with this. I think it's important to educate our younger people and people who don't know any better. I think that that's important. And all this research I have found that I had no idea about it, I'm hoping to write another book, maybe two. And then I'm just going to write novels and be Danielle Steele.
There you go.
Eat bonbons and live by the ocean. And, you know, that's what I'm going to do.
That's very funny. And why not? That's a good goal. I think it's an honorable quest you're on it, absolutely, without question. And I'm very happy to hear that it's generational and that your kids are going to continue the quest as well. And I'm not so convinced that all of the evidence has been destroyed. I think probably some of it has, but perhaps not this in this case. I'm wondering, this is the days, folks, also before digital archiving, and things got misplaced a lot. And one of those things that got misplaced, there was 3 tramps for a long time, and this is in the movie JFK, that were thought to be CIA operatives coming in Dealey Plaza. There was photos of them because nobody could find the files that were associated with their arrests at the Dallas police force. Well, lo and behold, it took till 1993, but somebody finally found them. They had been misfiled by hand. And I'm wondering, perhaps something along the lines of this may have happened with some of the evidence, and I'm hoping that the Nix film will indeed surface in its initial integrity, and we'll be able to examine it the way your grandfather did and maybe see somebody that we could identify or at least have a photo of standing at the Grassy Knoll, and perhaps with a gun in his hand, just like that fella had said, the fellow with the red bandana. And let's not forget, also, Ed Hoffman saw the shooter behind the fence in the Grassy Knoll, and that show is also at the www.nightfrightshow.com. If you're into this subject matter, go to the Night Fright Show website, because there is a heading there called JFK, and you're going to find all the top-notch researchers there in the archives. You can listen to the shows. They're all free, just like Gayle, Nix Jackson's show will be up as well for all eternity, and people will be able to examine. That's the beauty of the Internet. You know, you're going to find yourself selling books in 10 years. You know that, and it's happened. I have guest after guest calling me that have been on the first year that I went on air and saying, you know, I'm still selling books. I said, well, great, thanks for coming on the show, you know, and it's important to get the word out there, and don't give up hope.
It is. It is. And like I said earlier, Brent, if every one of these people believe the Warren Commission, then why are they still arguing about it? I mean, why isn't it just a case closed? Because logically, there's too many questions. And once you know some of the things you know and some of the things I know, you can't help but want to ask more questions. Go, well, now, wait a minute. What about this? What about that? And it just leads to something else. And there's just no way to say this was done by a lone gunman who admittedly was either really, really smart or really, really goofy. I mean, I've yet to figure that one out. But, you know, some people are really smart and have no common sense. I mean, maybe that was his case, Lee Harvey Oswald's. But I don't know. I do believe he was a part of this. I have now started to question whether or not he ever even took a shot. I just don't even know if he did. You know, after reading all the things I've read and the reports, and I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about files that have been released over the years. I'm talking about ARRB. I'm talking about police evidence, sheriffs, 488s, CIA files, FBI files. It's all there. It's there. It's just that it's so big and there's so much, it's hard to get through, you know, unless you're tenacious.
It's funny you mentioned Oswald, because Ted left me with the impression he felt that Oswald was being manipulated.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, completely. And Ted Sorensen, by the way, folks, JFK speechwriter and closest aide. Here's another plug for my book, and I'll plug Gayle's at the same time. Let me do Gayle's first. Gayle Nix Jackson's our guest tonight. Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film. www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on her book cover. That'll take you right to Amazon. On my website as well, the Night Fright Show website, is a picture of my book, which is called JFK. Deborah's going to love me for this show, because this is the most I've mentioned in any show.
Good. Because I love Deborah too, so that's good.
Oh, she's such a sweetie, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman, folks. She truly, truly is, and I say that with all glowing affection and admiration. The book is called JFK Assassination, From the Oval Office to Dealey Plaza, and you can just click on the book cover there too and order the two books at the same time. Pretty sure Amazon will give you a deal on the shipping price, and probably will be zero at that point. So another book is in store. How does your family deal with you going on tours, doing research? They must love you for it, right?
Oh, I don't know about that. They know I panic because you know, like I said, and I know I keep saying, and I'm neurotic on top of everything else, but
no.
None
for 19, you're doing just fine.
None of the cameras have cosmetic surgery filters, and that's a problem for me. So I am not the goddess I used to be. I was at one time, but I am no longer. So what they do like is that I am following what I know is to be the right thing, is to get out the truth. And, you know, Brent, I don't know how you feel, but you meet so many people that have agendas. And I'm very, very honest and wear my heart on my sleeve about my agenda. And it's to find my grandfather's film. I mean, everything I do, when I talk to people, it's, hey, well, do you know anything? Have you ever heard anything? And honestly, most people haven't. I mean, like I spoke with you earlier before we even started this interview, most people don't even know there was another film. They just know of the Zapruder film. So they're very, very supportive. They're my shipping. Both my kids are my shipping people. My dad is like, anything I can do for you. And my husband is just like, I'm just proud of you. And I know your grandfather would be too, because this story should have gotten out years ago. And I am remiss in it not happening sooner. But you know how life gets in the way sometimes, you know?
Well, raising kids will do that, won't it?
Yeah. And especially in my case, I was married 12 years before we had kids. The doctor said we could not have children. So my first one, I was 38, and my second one, I was 41.
Wow.
Which I know is real trendy if you have a nanny, but I didn't have a nanny. So
no kidding. Yeah. My mother was the nanny.
That's right.
For another family. No, I'm kidding, folks, but we were so poor. What is it Monty Python says? We grew up in a cardboard box in the bottom of a lake.
Yeah.
And luxury. Anyways, that's another story. Yeah, I love Monty Python as well.
Yeah. I just hope, Brent, I so appreciate you taking time to talk to me tonight, because I hope you and I talking tonight raises questions for the listeners that are listening. And I know you've got lots of listeners because I hear about them all the time. And I hope that maybe some of the newer listeners will say, wait a minute, I didn't know about this. And we'll look, and for themselves. They don't have to believe me. They don't have to believe you. They just need to go look for themselves and find the truth.
That's
because
why
it's out there.
Mm-hmm. Question everything.
Right.
Everything.
That's right.
Everything. Do you think the Vietnam War had anything to do with Kennedy's death? That was basically the synopsis that Oliver Stone put forward. That
it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know that it did, but I do know that it probably had a lot to do with LBJ not running for president again, not seeking re-election. I think the Vietnam War, I think that, and I know that we're supposed to be talking about JFK, not LBJ, but
no, that's fine.
I think in what I have read and what I've studied that he was all for being in it because of his military industrial complex buddies, but he realized that it was a bad thing. So I really think that weighed heavily upon him. I am not condoning this man by any means, am I? And he's a Texan, but he just, I don't know. I'm hoping that he saw the error of his ways before he passed away and asked forgiveness. I hope he did.
Well, I always admired him for pushing through the civil rights legislation.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And many people overlook that fact. But Ted told me in the interview that I asked him squarely, I said, was JFK going to keep LBJ? And he said, oh, yeah. He said because they wanted to push through the civil rights legislation, and without LBJ, that wasn't going to happen. So,
because of Texas?
Yeah.
Or because of his power in the Senate?
Well, both, and also the fact that he was a Southern governor.
Yeah.
A Southern vice president.
Right.
And he spoke very highly of the fact that he pushed it through.
Right.
And he did what he did because he knew. Ted told me, he said they knew, both Kennedy and Johnson, that once the civil rights legislation went through, there was so much opposition to it that would be the end of the Democratic Party in the southern states. Mm-hmm. And it pretty much was.
That's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know what, Brent?
Carter.
If you look at, and especially, I'm jealous that you got to meet Ted Sorensen, but I think that man, like I've said before, was a wonderful writer. Oh my goodness, I wish I could write like him. But think of the things that JFK did in his short tenure, and then compare it to what our president today, and every one of them since then, if you really want to be honest, has done. Look at all the things JFK did. The Peace Corps, started the civil rights, NASA.
Yeah. Unbelievable, wasn't it?
Yeah. And there is something to be said about idealism. There actually a lot to be said about idealism. It's a good thing. And,
that's the common thread that runs through that whole administration.
Mm-hmm. We need more of it.
And Ted Ted put it this way. I asked him about the New Frontier, and I said, what about the New Frontier, Ted? And he said, well, he said, it's a testament to everybody involved because nobody was ever charged with anything illegal afterwards. And he said, I can't think of one administration after JFK that rings true. Somebody somewhere got charged with something.
That's true. That is so true. A scandal in every single administration.
Yeah, completely.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think of the death of Bobby and how that just took the wind out of everybody's sails.
Oh, yeah.
We ended up with Nixon. Can you imagine? We almost had Bobby, and we ended up with Nixon. We're going to have to start to wrap it up, my friend. Is there anything you'd like to leave the folks with?
Well, you know what? I'm very appreciative of all the support. I honestly, Brent, I know it's coming. I mean, I know that people are going to, someone somewhere down the line is going to say, Gayle, who told you could write? But it hasn't happened yet. And it just touches me. Brent, you're an author. You know how that goes. I'm a neurotic one. Are you?
Oh, yeah. Come on.
Okay. So I'm just waiting for the others, shoe to fall or drop or whatever. But everyone has been so very kind, and I have gotten phone calls and emails and letters and just people saying, Gayle, I couldn't put it down. I started with, do you know James Wagonboard, who is a poet who's written 43 books? He's the new whistleblower for Time Life, and I'm thankful to know him. He's the man who introduced my grandfather and my father to the Time Life guys when they went to New York. Wow. But he called me 2 weeks ago, and he said, early in the morning, I can't believe I was awake. I'm never awake early in the morning. And he said, Gayle, I just had to tell you, I got your book yesterday. I read it straight through. Do not tell me this is the first time you have ever written. And I said, I told you I was a nerdy English professor. I mean, I've graded so many papers. I mean, I think I've learned it through osmosis. But he said, I just want to say this is one of the best books I've ever read. And I tell you, Brent, it really, I cried. Okay, I cry. Whenever I hear people say those things to me, I still get a tear in my eye. Because it's for my grandfather, it just means the world to me. So, that's
Gayle, is there a specific group you could recommend on Facebook or groups that people can converse with you?
Oh, well, I have my own personal page, and then I have the book page, and it's Gayle Nix Jackson. I mean, everything is Gayle Nix Jackson, except Twitter. It's Gayle Jack. So, But everything else, even my Skype is Gayle Nix Jackson. Everything. I'm easy to find.
Now you're going to get Skypes from Australia, you know that. In the middle of the night, just when you're asleep, ding, 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 it's going to be Skype. Folks, Gayle Nix Jackson, 19 years old and a blonde bombshell. I kept looking at her picture all night on Skype. The book is called Orville Nix, The Missing JFK Assassination Film, www.nightfrightshow.com. Order the book from the comfort of your own home. Just click on that book cover. Gayle, thank you. Do not be a stranger.